Today on Trucks, the guys have already given Project Wicked Willys the attitude it had to have on the exterior. Now they're ready to dive into the interior of their classic wagon, so everything will work together inside and out. After they take the fear factor out of custom interior work, they'll show you a concept vehicle that Chevy just might put into production. That's all today on Trucks.
Welcome to this week's show, everybody. What we have here is one of Chevrolet's latest concept vehicles, and don't worry, we'll take a closer look at this ride later in the show. Now, a couple weeks ago, the Wicked Willys made its return to the truck shop, and this week, we're going to dive into the interior on our classic wagon.
Now, most people look at interior work the same way they look at electrical and paint work. They're scared to death of it. So they usually take their vehicle someplace and have it custom done, and that can be expensive. So today we're going to try to take some of the fear out of it for you, see if we can show you some tips so you can put a really neat interior into any kind of vehicle.
Now, the first thing you need to do before you start any interior work is take a long, hard look at exactly what you want to do and what colors you're going to use. Now, keep in mind, the carpets, seat, and door panels need to work together. Now, for our application, the seats we got from Choo Choo Customs are a brown velour with a tweed insert. The door panels are covered in that same tweed, and the accent we're going to use to cover the door panels and the dash is a much lighter colored vinyl. Finally, as you can see, the carpet we got from Auto Custom Carpet is going to tie everything together perfectly.
Now, the carpet is the first place that we're going to start. Now, you can see right off the bat that we've got a major problem because this floor is really uneven. It looks like a truck bed. You're probably thinking, well, just glue the carpet down over it. And you could do that, but it'd look really bad. So we're going to go ahead and smooth it out by putting down a piece of plywood. Now, the floor is too long and too wide to do it all in one piece. So we're going to do it in two sections, with the first piece ending right here at this differential hump. Going to get started by making some good measurements on the sides and around the wheel wells, around the whole perimeter, and then cutting it out.
Now that we have the front piece cut out, we need to make sure it's fitting just right. Now, obviously, if things aren't laying down exactly where you want them, this is the time to fix it. Also, the wood needs to mount solidly to the floor, so we need to mark and drill holes for the mounting bolts.
While Mel's been busy mounting that front piece, I went ahead and cut out this rear section. Now, it was a little more tricky than the front because I had to go around this gas filler neck, the wheel wells, and of course that hump for the rear end. Now let's see just how close these measurements were. Man, that's right on.
It's perfect. Now we're going to mount down the rear piece just like we did the front, so we need to drill more mounting holes. This is also a good time to get the pedestal for your rear seat in place. Mark and drill your holes. Now that we know everything's going to fit right, Stace can go to work with the carpet.
All right. Now here's a tip for cutting carpet. You always want to cut it from the back side if you can, using a utility knife. Now this leaves a nice clean cut because you don't end up cutting the fibers. It's a heck of a lot easier. Now we're going to hold the carpet in place with staples as opposed to glue because they're a lot more durable. And we'll start here in the middle and work our way out to keep the line from going crooked on us. Make sure that you work the carpet into all these little contours. Oh yeah, just a reminder, make sure that your carriage bolts are in to mount all this down if you want to hide that under the carpet. Now all we have to do is bolt down the carpeted pieces.
Now, one of the benefits to covering the floor in two separate pieces is if we ever decide to haul something nasty back here, like a big old greasy motor, all we have to do is pop out the back panel and we won't destroy it.
Now with the floor bolted down, we can get started on these sides. Now Mel already showed you the panels we're going to use in this area, but out here and between the panel and the windows, well, that needs to be covered too. And for some of this, we're going to need to make our own panel. Now for this front area, we're going to take some measurements. Then we're going to cut out the backing plate using this thick mat board that we got at the local craft store. Now as you can see, we're going to run from the floor all the way up to this headliner tack strip. Now for the sides, we're going to stop right there at that body seam. Now remember, you have got to make one of these for any area that you need backing support for your vinyl.
The window moldings are another area that needs some attention because they've been under some serious abuse for years. Now the first thing we're going to do is hit them with a 400 grit sandpaper to clean them up. Now since our moldings are down to the bare metal, we'll use a primer before hitting them with a quality epoxy paint for durability.
Now once you have your backing cut out, you need to cover it with some material. First thing we're going to do is cover it with a 1/4 inch piece of foam. That'll give us some nice padding. Now take your adhesive, spray it on the backing, and then lay it on the foam. And finally, cut out around it. Now it's time for the vinyl. Now make sure you lay down a piece of cardboard so you have a nice flat surface. Now take your piece, spray your adhesive on the foam, and now lay it on the vinyl. Make sure you don't get any wrinkles in it. Then finally, cut it out, but make sure you leave about 1 inch of material all the way around. Now to get the vinyl to bend around these curves, you need to come in and make a bunch of pie cuts around the radius of the corner. Now remember, the more of these you make, the smoother the bend in the material.
Now a lot of older vehicles already have part of the weather stripping stapled into the window molding from the factory. Of course ours is shot and needs to be replaced, and it's always best to do this before you paint the molding. Now the best way to attach the weather stripping is to get completely away from the idea of using staples and drill holes through the stripping and the molding. Then you can use pop rivets to hold the stripping in place.
You know, we're not even close to being done with the interior of the Wicked Willys yet, but right now we need to take a break. But don't go away, you need to see what this is going to look like. We'll be right back.
Later on Trucks, we've got an amazing concept from the minds of Chevrolet to show you. But up first, we still have plenty of work to do inside the Wicked Willys.
Welcome back everybody. If you're just joining us, we're well on our way to giving the Wicked Willys a custom interior. Now we've already done the carpets, panels, and window frames. Now it's time to start gluing on the upholstery inside the wagon.
Now the first thing we need to do is glue on a piece of this 1/4 inch padding into these areas that run between the side panels, the windows, and these new panels that we made. Then we can cut it to fit. After that, we can glue on the vinyl, making sure to pull it tight so there's no wrinkles. Now keep in mind, any of these areas where you're going to have a seam, you need to roll the vinyl under so you have a nice finished edge. These side panels were made for us by Choo-Choo Customs using the original panels as a pattern. And we'll set them in place. That way we'll be able to see how all these seams and edges are finished out.
Eventually, we're going to have to put the glass back in the Willys, and since we don't want any leakage, we're going to have to put on new weather stripping. Now, it's always a good idea to put the rubber on the glass before you try to put it in place. Also, a little shot of sealant under your stripping will ensure it doesn't leak on you.
Now the dash, that's where things get a little tricky. Now, we knew that we wanted to cover it with vinyl to match the rest of the interior, but anytime you bend vinyl around a complex curve like this, you're going to get wrinkles. There's just no way around it. So what we'll do is cover it in 2 pieces. Now the main area here will be 1 piece, and then this center section will be its own separate piece. Fortunately, the only area we have to make a backing for is this center area. Now to do that, take your mat board, soak it in water until it's saturated, then carefully bend it around the contours of the area, make sure you don't break it, then trim it to fit and allow it to dry.
While we're waiting for the mat board to dry, we can go ahead and put the side panels on. Now these things are held in place with exterior screws, so all we have to do is make sure they're lined up properly, punch holes in them, and go ahead and screw them in place. After that, you can slide in the window, followed by the molding. Well, now you're really starting to see how the panels and color choices we made are really starting to work together.
Once your dash piece is dry, set it in place, mark the area for your gauges, then all you have to do is cut them out. Now we've already put foam on the dash, and we'll just follow that by gluing on the vinyl. Now once we're done, we'll go ahead and do the same thing with the insert. Now we had our original gauges restored and calibrated for that Dodge crate motor by United Speedometer. Now they go in the insert, then the insert goes on the dash, and then everything's held in place by the gauge mounting bolts. Now check out how nice this seam line follows the contours of the dash.
Well, the interior on the Wicked Willys is definitely starting to come together, but before we go any further, we need to pay some bills. Don't go away. We got more trucks for you right after this.
Chevrolet may put this truck into production, which sounds like a great concept to us. But before we show you the SSR, we need to finish the interior of the Wicked Willys.
Welcome back to Trucks, everybody. Now we're getting pretty close to finishing up the interior on the Wicked Willys. Now it's time to give ourselves a place to sit.
To be able to take a load off in the rear, we're going to go with a fold and tumble seat. Now we've already mounted the pedestals to the holes we drilled earlier. Now all we have to do is mount the pivot arm to the pedestal, and the rear seat is ready to go.
Now the front seats are just as easy because we took care of our mounting holes way before we put the carpet down. And we did have to add these extensions to the bolts though, so they'll go through the plywood all the way through the floor. Now all I have to do is bolt them down.
Tell you what, Stace, the stitching in the headrest turned out really cool, and those seats are a perfect match for our interior.
Yeah, it really came out good, didn't it?
It really did. Now finally we can get the door panels in place. Now these little upholstery buttons are what actually hold them to the door, and the thing that's really neat about using the buttons is you can paint them any color you want.
Now up next is the steering column. We got this 3-inch drop bracket from a company named I Did It, and then we're going to follow that with their 32-inch chrome tilt steering column. And we're going to cap that with this Grant Signature Series wheel.
Since we basically copied the stock door panel, we were able to keep the factory handles and armrests. In fact, all we had to do was put a little new material on the armrest to retain some of that classic Willy style.
Now that we know where we're going to be sitting at, we need to adjust our shifter linkage. Now you can see this lever on this NV4500 5-speed we got from Advanced Adapters is sitting in a really nice spot. We've also got their Atlas II transfer case that has dual controls that you can mount, heck, wherever you want. We're going to lay ours down here into the center so they clear the seats and the main shifter. We'll also have to make a metal panel to cover all this.
Now, since you might be wondering where we're going to mount our battery, we'll go ahead and show you. We're going to use this battery box from Mr. Gasket, so it'll be safely contained right here behind the wheel well, and we'll still have easy access. Of course, inside the box, we're going to stuff a deep cycle Optimum.
The last thing we're going to do on the interior today is make some carpet pieces for the floor. Now, the best way to do this is to make a pattern out of cardboard, transfer it to the carpet, and then just cut it out. Now, keep in mind, just like the dash, anytime you have a compound bend like this, you're going to need to make a seam if you don't want it to buckle. Finally, we'll finish it off with these factory sill plates. Of course, these need to be buffed.
Well, it's plain to see the Wicked Willys is definitely starting to live up to its name, both inside and out. And now you can see exactly how the interior as well as the exterior are working perfectly together.
Now today's tip deals with balancing. Now I know a lot of you guys are building 383 strokers out there by taking a 350, sticking in a 400 crank. Now this gives you more cubic inches and ultimately more horsepower. Now where you can run into trouble is by getting your crank rods and pistons, but forgetting that you've got to upgrade your damper to one that's for an externally balanced 400 crank, like this one we got from Summit Racing. A stock 350 unit is not going to cut it. Also, if you're running a stick, you've got to upgrade to a 400 flywheel. Remember, the flywheel and the damper have got to match the crank or it won't balance right and it'll come apart on you in a hurry.
Just can't get enough of trucks? Check us out online at truckstv.com.
Thanks for staying with us, everybody. Now, one look at the SSR Concept vehicle, and the first question that comes to mind is, what the heck is it? Is it a truck? Is it a hot rod? The reincarnation of the El Camino, maybe? Well, from what we've heard, it might be the replacement of the Camaro, which is designated to disappear in 2003.
Now, with all those confusing questions in mind, one thing that's not a mystery at all is what SSR stands for, and that's Super Sport Roadster. And let's face it, anytime the word roadster is involved, you have to have a convertible. And the creative minds at Chevy have taken that concept to a whole nother level.
Now, when you look at the styling on the front end of the SSR, there is no mistaking the influence of an early 50s Chevy pickup. It's got the horizontal grille, the big rounded fenders, and a large split windshield. But lurking under the hood is what'll really raise the hair on the back of your neck. They didn't mess around with a 4 or a 6 cylinder, but dropped in a huge 6-liter V8, and it spins all the way through rear-wheel drive. This thing's begging to be stomped on. Thank you, Chevrolet.
Another thing that Chevy really hit the mark on is the interior. Of course, you always want it to be functional, but it's got to match up stylistically as well. And this cockpit definitely captures a classic feel with the round gauges, steering wheel, and seats. But it's also charging into the new millennium with a hidden sound system, and check out the fiber optics in the floor mats.
The SSR is sitting on a 116-inch wheelbase with 20-inch Goodyears in the rear, 19s in the front. And just in case you forget the heritage of this vehicle, little bow ties have been carved right into the rubber. And here's a new concept. The designers didn't just build a nice front clip and stop there. They followed it all the way back to the rear end with big, bulging fenders and rounded taillights.
Now, this vehicle was designed with driving in mind, not hauling jet skis and motorcycles, but since it is a truck, it does have storage space. Under the smooth tonneau and contoured tailgate, you've got a really clean bed with wood slats that once again follows the styling cues of a 50s era pickup with a modern twist.
Now let's see, we have 6-liter V8 power, a color-changing paint job, and styling that's just awesome. Yeah, those are the reasons for us to give this vehicle 2 very enthusiastic thumbs up. Now, the question becomes, when is Chevy going to put this thing into production so we can all have one? Let's just say we hope it's before 2003.
And now truck gear, parts, tools, and equipment for pickups and sport utilities.
Okay, so you're stranded on the side of the road, and yeah, you got a set of jumper cables. Problem is, they aren't going to do you much good because you've run the gas tank bone dry. Not to worry. That's where a half gallon of Pennzoil's new Roadside Rescue comes to the rescue. All you have to do is pour this product into your tank, and you can go up to 10 miles in search of the next gas station. Roadside Rescue goes for about 15 bucks a bottle and can be safely stored in your vehicle for up to 5 years.
If you're going to go off-road, you need to be prepared, and that means having a good winch. Now, this 9000S series from Super Winch has got all the power that you'll need to get yourself or a couple buddies out of a hole. Now, it's got a 2-horsepower electric motor and all the important winch features like power in and out with a remote and automatic in-the-drum braking. Now, the best part about this winch is you can mount it down on the bumper, or you can rotate the housing, mount it behind the bumper. No matter what your situation, Super Winch has got a setup in your price range.
One thing you can always count on is if you put your truck to work, it's going to get dirty. And since we know you guys are always in search of the ultimate all-purpose cleaner, let us introduce you to Ready Race. This stuff works on everything from aluminum to stainless steel and vinyl, and can even handle the toughest jobs like brake dust on rims or spilled antifreeze. All you have to do is spray it on and wipe it off. And let's face it, since Ready Race only costs about $5 a bottle, you almost owe it to yourself to give it a try. That's going to do it for Truck Gear. Here's a preview of next week's show.
The Trail Boss gets an axle upgrade, as well as brand new disc brakes in the rear, before the guys go under the hood of their CJ7 to install the ultimate off-road tool. Then it's another creation from Performance West. It looks like a PT Cruiser, but it's really a bruiser. After all that, they'll upgrade the fuel delivery system on the Wicked Willys. That's all next week on Trucks.
Well, that's going to do it for this week's show. We appreciate you hanging out with us.
Yeah, we'll have more trucks for you next week. Time to hammer on this thing.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Where's the keys at?
Oh, man.
You don't have the keys?
The Chevy guys took the keys.
Well, just hotwire it then.
Now, there's a plan.
Hey, don't ever know.
Yeah.
Trucks is an RTM production.